Man, what if this pizza here was hot instead of cold? What my life might be like. I just like brushed my beard. This shit getting thick though. With a C, 2 C's. Huh? Getting lit out here. Top 10 myths about US presidents. It's kind of a longer video. Probably get through half of it now and half of it in another video. Let's see how many of these myths we believe. We'd had a very long section, a lot of my classes dedicated to presidents. So they're always very interesting. The US political system is pretty unique compared to other ones in that it sucks. No, the way you study politics is different than how you experience it in like your adult life. And the US presidency is a very interesting position, you know, where the president doesn't really have to do a lot. And, you know, it's really good. The president's good for like a good story rather than for their leadership. In my opinion, I think that the myth of the president is a lot more valuable than what they actually do based on how history remembers them. That's just my personal take on it. Of course, in modern history, it feels a fuck ton different, but I would rather believe the myths about George Washington than know the truth, to be honest. It just makes the country's founding so patriotic, I think. But let's get into it.
Examining the lives of historical... Separating facts from fiction can be challenging when examining the lives of historical leaders, especially American presidents who have, well, history on their side. After all, American school children are taught all about presidential exploits and achievements, instilling national pride at an early age.
Exactly.
However, as John Adams famously once said, facts can be stubborn things. Oddly, for a country founded on the principles of liberty and free speech, the United States has a long and troubled relationship with the truth.
Yeah, you watch your dirty mouth. Yeah, Americans write terrible history. I mean, that is just like the first thing you learn when you go to college, is that history is written very, very poorly.
Dark yellow journalism that led to the Spanish-American War, or claims of smoking weed but not inhaling. I mean, seriously, Bill? And repeated cries of fake news. Words can be cheaper than a dented can of beans in the discount bin. Also, it cannot be overstated that 12 American presidents owned slaves. So regardless of how noble the words life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness might look on paper, the Founding Fathers clearly didn't mean that all men were created equal.
I mean, there's a lot to be said for... Yeah, never mind. We won't get into it. You guys have the conversation. You know my stance on it. So we'll just
Nixon
move on.
resigned because of Watergate. Richard Dick Nixon possessed many talents, and he wore several hats during his well-chronicled life, most of which he spent in public service. Soldier, lawyer, congressman, senator, vice president, president, and, well, trickster. Furthermore, he even managed to get his drink on regularly, pounding rum and cokes late at night while roaming the White House and drunk-dialing old pals. Despite his multitasking prowess, Nixon's paranoia and vindictive nature ultimately led to his disgraced ouster from politics. Although the Watergate scandal would define the Nixon presidency, it was all his shady shenanigans prior to the infamous break-in that set off a domino effect and his fall from grace. Nixon's insatiable thirst for power, it didn't stop after winning the White House in 1968. This was just the beginning. In an effort to wield control over his enemies, both real and imagined, he organized a goon squad led by aides G. Gordon Liddy and E. Howard Hunt to find dirt by any means possible. Among other criminal activities, the team carried out the office burglary of the psychiatrist treating the infamous Pentagon Papers whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg. Nixon feared that this ex-military analyst might squawk about the government's misinformation involving the Vietnam War, and he wanted him silenced, even if it meant through blackmail. But in the end, Tricky Dick would be exposed for orchestrating a massive cover-up of multiple wrongdoings, including obstruction of justice, destroying evidence, secret bombing missions in Cambodia and Laos, as well as that little incident at the Democratic National Committee headquarters, which is better known as Watergate. Number 9. Teddy Roosevelt.
Dude, like literally, if I never have to hear about Watergate again, I would be fucking ecstatic about it. I had this whole American presidency communication course set up, and that's all we talked about for 6 months was Watergate. Yes, there was a preliminary part of the class where we had to take online and be like involved in to get into the course, and then after you get in, it just basically was just all about Watergate, and it was fucking awful. Terrible.
Roosevelt once rode a bull.
Interesting. Awful, though.
There's a famous scene in the classic western The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance when a reporter discovers that an esteemed politician, Jimmy Stewart, managed to build his entire reputation on a myth. In the end, however, the journalist comes to the conclusion, when the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
Swag.
While this
That's
works
so true,
to sell
though.
newspapers and Hollywood endings, their truth usually surfaces. Such is the case of a well-circulated grainy photo of Teddy Roosevelt riding bareback on an enormous bull moose. Sadly, it never happens, and the legend's just a much better story. What makes this ruse particularly deflating is that for decades Roosevelt did live an extraordinary life.
Hell
to which
yeah.
he triumphantly emerged as the hero of San Juan Hill in the Spanish-American War. He once gave a stump speech while bleeding from the chest after being shot, and fittingly, as a champion of America's progressive era, Roosevelt became forever enshrined in stone on Mount Rushmore, along with fellow presidential titans George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln. Nevertheless, the phony photo was pure
Roosevelt's
bull moose
fucking
shit.
savage,
The publicity
bro.
stunt was hatched during Roosevelt's comeback attempt to win a third presidential bid as the candidate for the new progressive Bull Moose Party. Having lost the Republican nomination to incumbent William Taft, Roosevelt hoped to blaze a new trail by breaking away from the GOP, relying on his aforementioned hypermasculinity and magnetic personality. Unfortunately, it didn't work. The cleverly doctored image would eventually be exposed, and voters opted for new leadership with the election of the Democrat Woodrow Wilson. Number 8.
swag,
Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves. No other US president has been equally worshipped and vilified as much as Abraham Lincoln. Although history typically shines a glowing light on the 16th president as a beloved martyr who helped preserve the Union, Lincoln's views on slavery didn't always live up to his appeal for better angels of our nature. While Lincoln stood against the expansion of slavery, he never campaigned as an abolitionist and wrestled with the constitutionality of ending slavery. In a letter dated August the 22nd, 1962, to renowned newspaper editor Horace Greeley
That neckbeard.
of Go West Young Man fame,
Sorry.
Lincoln wrote, "My paramount objective in this struggle is to save the Union and is not either to save or to destroy slavery.
Yeah,
If I
that's-
could save the Union
Without
freeing
freeing any
slave,
slaves, I would do it,
And
yeah.
if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone,
I would also do that. That quote came out, and it was like during the revolution of Twitter for my generation personally. People would post that quote saying that Lincoln is not a good president because he was not purposely trying to, end slavery, and thus competing with the ideal that black people should be Democrats or Republicans based off of history, and that is all like totally besides the point. Everybody back then was kind of racist. That doesn't make it morally okay, granted the stance of the rest of the world, but it was very easy to be American-centric back then, way more than it is now, right? Globalization has changed the way information travels and how people are exposed to, even if it's just images of other countries or just being PC about other cultures. And back then, it just was not like that. You could just have slaves and deal with your own political ideals and really build America. It doesn't make him not a great president just because he would have ended the war without ending slavery, right? So, come on, man.
Infusing a
Jesus.
similar wavering tone, Lincoln used his executive power to issue the Emancipation Proclamation 6 months later. The carefully worded document only granted freedom to slaves in states that had been ceded, but it didn't apply to those in border states or certain regions considered loyal to the Union. For the record, slavery would not be formally abolished until 2 years later with the passing of the 13th Amendment. Number 7. Gerald Ford had 2 left feet. For those old enough to remember the early days of Saturday Night Live, Chevy Chase performed a series of running gags depicting then-President Ford as a clumsy buffoon. The comedy sketches drew big laughs and even bigger ratings, helping to launch the stellar cast into superstardom as the show became one of the longest-running programs in television history. Although Ford had his fair share of political stumbles, pardoning Nixon, losing to Carter in '76, the 38th president had been a bona fide star athlete at the University of Michigan. Ford played center and line linebacker on the Wolverines football team that went undefeated for 2 years, winning national titles in 1932 and 1933.
That's a badass
After graduating
record.
with a degree in economics, he turned down offers from the Chicago Bears and Green Bay Packers of the NFL to pursue a coaching job while attending Yale Law School. Ford later served with distinction in the U.S. Navy during World War II, rising to the rank of lieutenant commander. The athletic and well-respected officer took part in numerous combat operations in the Pacific while stationed aboard the aircraft carrier, the USS Monterey, including in the Battle of the Philippine Sea and carrier strikes against Japanese forces at Wake Islands, Marianas, and New Guinea. Flash forward to 2018, and SNL is in its 44th season. Bill Murray is still funny, Chevy Chase isn't, and Gilda Radner and John Belushi died way too soon. And for the record, Gerald Ford may have only served a brief, largely forgettable 2-year term, but his impressive athleticism is
military experience, patriotism, right? Those things were extremely important to the presidency back then, and that was a really large shift there. So we're going to end the video here. I love the way this guy speaks. We're definitely going to be back for a part 2 tomorrow. I'm just going to sit down and finish it here, actually. So please join us. I'm actually really enjoying this video. It's bringing back a lot of memories. I'm trying not to say a lot because I have a lot of thoughts and ideas about presidents, and I want to get through the video and focus about the myths, and that's hard for me to do because I get sidetracked very easily because I'm just focused on like how they speak and their leadership. That's all I care about personally. So hearing about the myths specifically is a fun thing for me. So, but all I really ever want to talk about is like leadership style, you know, their background and how that affects how people perceive them. And like the truth is always kind of secondary to what people want to talk about. That's how I feel personally. So that's why YouTube is always very fun for me, because the truth about things really doesn't matter. You know, it's just about like what is our experience with that information, and that's really where the conversation starts. So I'll see you guys, and I'll eat some cold pizza in the meantime. Peace.